What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and today we want to have a look at cores. Actually, wasn't even my video idea. I was sitting here basically thinking like, what video can you do? And currently I'm a bit out of ideas. I have a lot of ideas for the Amazon series, but I think like, can't all be Amazon. And sometimes it really pays off to have your own Discord server. This time, guy named Yellow, he basically passed 2 for 10 today, congratulations on that, and got his first core, and he asked what kind of core is good, which is a good core, which core is really worth getting. And I thought like, yeah, something I can do a video about, this is something that we can talk about, and I wanted to do that by presenting you my 3 cores that I personally like the most, or that people from my clan like the most, and that basically, in my opinion, are the best cores that you can get. Overall, I have to say most of those cores are pretty well balanced. So not like, I would say like 80% of them are like pretty okay. And I would only think of one really bad core, and that would be the one for Sun Devourer Eos. Sadly, Sun Devourer Eos got a horrible core. Every time Everlasting Sun is triggered, which is once per turn, you gain 5% all damage reduction. And 1 attribute reduction is cleared. Horrible. I think that's really one of the worst scores, if not the worst score that we have here. But most of them are pretty balanced. I like the SFX one. SFX one is a fine core. The Mockman core, I have the Mockman core. Pretty decent crit chance boost and some damage and everything you want. And most of them are like that. They give you a pretty decent boost. And if you, for example, like SFX, you can get SFX core, and SFX will be a little bit better and will do something for your team, and it will be quite alright. And this is the case for most of them, but the 3 I want to present to you guys, they stand a bit out because they are really good beyond that and might even make you focus on a hero you wouldn't have even considered before. And the first of those cores is actually the core for LFA. The LFA itself, I don't want to say has fallen out of meta. He's pretty good still, especially in PvE. I use him Realmsgate a lot. But like, the time where he could really shine was the time of Panda teams. Teams that didn't have an innate energy feed and couldn't really do something if they were horrified and their energy was drained. Those teams that really suffered from his Horrify. And those were his best times, and those times are a little bit over, but he's still a strong hero, can deal a lot of damage, can CC the enemy, but it's not as strong as before. Still a good hero. He has a pretty great core though, and this core is the Noble Core of Origin for Aspen. We can read through the text for once. At the beginning of the battle, grants all allies 1 layer of Devil Armor. Devil Armor is explained below here. Every layer of Devil Armor increases control immunity by 15% for 3 rounds. This effect decreases by 5% every round, so right off the bat we get 15% control immunity, which is very nice if you're fighting like a Starving Jarrah team or something. It will give you some CC, some CI, so that's quite great. And every time Lord of Aspen basically defeats an enemy, all layers gain another layer of Devil Armor again. So we even have a way to get those layers of Devil Armor back, which is quite nice, even though I would reckon it's a rather hard to fulfill a requirement for him to actually kill a hero. Happens less often as you might think. Often enough heroes die to just some random dot, or there's just a slight bit of damage missing from your main hero, and then Rogan comes in and kills the enemy, and you don't gain that level of that layer of Devil Armor. So that effect, I wouldn't count too much on it, even though it's certainly nice to get some control immunity at the start of the battle, and maybe even in the battle as well. The next part, when Ella releases basic attacks or active skills to horrified enemies, Lord of Aspen additionally launches an attack, dealing 400% of attack damage to them. We gain some extra damage, which is rather nice. Lord of Fear Aspen does the attack, so we can scale attack on Aspen to do more damage, which is great as well. Aspen is a nice hero to focus on. Especially as he is SEC hero, you can kind of scale into speed, get some early disruption, it's great. And then the next part of the effect, which is really the point that, the selling point of the score, and the thing that makes me really like it, when any enemy is horrified, increases all allies attack by 4% and damage reduction by 3% for 2 rounds. So basically, becomes a buff machine, which is really insane. Because his basic already targets the entire back row, there's already 4 enemies, and his CC is pretty reliable, especially if we run a Wraec Scepter. So if you CC the entire back row, the 4 enemies, already 16% attack and 12% damage reduction on a Noble Core with a core liberation of 3, so not even like any shenanigans with upgraded Noble Cores and more Noble Cores on the team, which you can certainly do, and it will help you and increase that buff eventually to 8% attack and 6% damage reduction, which in the same scenario would give you like 32% attack buff and 24% damage reduction buff, which is quite huge. So it is really a nice core, and it is a core that is worth investing in. You can run other Noble Cores and this core will become even better. And it is a core that I certainly want to acquire in the future. It is one I didn't go for yet, but a lot of my guildmates actually have it. And they use it, and I certainly like the effect of it. So that's quite great. Beyond that, the sublimations of Aspen really help. Like especially this one, inflicts Fear Abyssal Gaze to all targets on the active skill. That helps a lot. And then you have, of course, have his passive skills. Whenever an enemy dies, increases self-crit damage by 35%, and with a 100% chance to inflict Fear Abyssal Gaze on all enemies for 2 rounds. So we have a lot of possibilities to inflict fear here, either by killing enemies or by inflicting through Aspen himself. So that's quite great, and the core itself will give you a lot of buffs, so quite a decent core to invest in, and my place 3 on this list. The second core I want to talk about is the Starving Jarrah core, actually, and the Starving Jarrah core is a core that is, in my opinion, rather often overlooked. It wasn't that much overlooked at the beginning of the core meta when the cores in the 3 of Origin was first released. At that time it was the most prominent core, and this was mainly because this core was actually bugged. And at that time it basically was way stronger than intended and CC'd way more enemies than it should. And now that it is fixed, a lot of people used the opportunity they had to switch their core away from Starving Jarrah to another core. So Starving Jarrah core are way less prominent in the meta, even though they are quite nice. And let's talk about why that is the case, that I think they are quite nice. The effect is when an ally releases active skills, there is a 25% chance to restore them 30 energy, some energy feed here. A 30% chance to restore extra 30 energy, nice, and a 15% chance to inflict Petrify Rocklock on 1 random enemy for 2 rounds. So that is on active skill, and then we have a similar effect for the basic skill. When an ally releases basic attacks, restores them HP equal to 300% of Starving Jarrah's attack, so a little bit restoration, quite nice, with a 15% chance to inflict Freeze Cold Chill on 1 random enemy for 2 rounds. Additionally, we have to say those chances that you see here actually scale with control precision and CI offset on the hero that is attacking. Was confirmed by support, so like when your rogue is attacking and you randomly happen to roll control precision on him, that will actually scale in this Petrify Rocklock and Freeze Culture and will give you better chances to CC the enemy. So what is really the good part of this core? The good part of this core, and basically also what made him so OP at the first release of the core, is you have a hero attacking like SFX in a team with a Starving Jarrah core present. And SFX, like my SFX for example, you run her with 2,500 speed and she's super fast and she attacks. And suddenly you activate the core and you lock down the main damage dealer of the enemy. And at that point, you basically won the fight. Because the enemy will have a hard time coming back from his main damage dealer or main hero not being able to attack on turn 1. On turn 2 you might even CC the main damage dealer with Starving Jarrah and lock the fight down entirely. And things like that work quite fine, and the way that it was used at the beginning of cores and trees was basically with the super fast team with Snowhearts. Have as many heroes as you can from your team attack first and lock down the enemy with a lot of CC. And you can still get those CC levels like they were in the past. You just have to invest into this core way more. A Noble core like this has a 15% chance to inflict Petrify Rocklock, but you can of course reach core liberation 8 by having 5 other Noble cores on the team. And At that point, it will be double the CC chance at 30% chance to inflict Petrify, Rocklock, or Freeze Cold Chill, which is quite nice as well. So to conclude that it's mainly about the disruption of the core that makes it nice. All other things like the energy feed or the heal are basically just added on top. This core is really about the disruption of locking an enemy down, keeping it locked down, and being faster than the enemy to inflict CC on him without any chance of the enemy attacking first or attacking at all, if you get lucky enough to get this CC off and lock the enemy down. A very nice thing as well that should be noted, usually Petrify, Rocklock and Freeze Cold Chill are restricted to some health gates. We can see that in the ability of Starwing Jarrah. Let's see. There's a 35% chance to inflict Petrify Rocklock to enemies whose current HP are no less than 50%. So all enemies with more than 50% HP can be inflicted with Petrify Rocklock by reactive, and below that it is a Freeze Cold Chill. So those health gates don't apply to this core, meaning it's really only restricted to if your hero does an active attack or an active skill or a basic attack. So in theory, you could double CC a full life hero with this core. Of course, only if you're lucky enough to inflict 2 CCs on the same turn and hit the same hero both at times. But it is possible, and it would certainly be strong. And just for the disruptive effect and for your ability to really invest into this core and get more out of it, and for us already knowing that it's worth investing in it and how strong it can be in PvP, this is my second place on the list, and I personally really like it. Now coming up, the first place, and I kind of have to say by far, even though I don't really like it. Some people, especially people that were in my last live stream, already know which core I'm talking about and which core is going to take place 1. And that core, of course, is the core for Star Alchemist Holmes Young. And this core is, in my opinion, it's pretty broken. So what does it do? At the beginning of the battle, Self gains 60 bottles of Immaculate Potion. Basically, the Immaculate Potions are the charges we use up to activate effects of the core and gain progress or gain an effect out of it. And we have 3 different effects that can happen with this core. Whenever an ally takes basic attacks or active skills, consumes 1 bottle of Immaculate Potion to restore the attacked ally's HP equal to 4% of max HP and increase their attack by 8% and armor by 8% for 2 rounds. So what happens is one of your allies gets attacked with any skill from the enemy, and as soon as that happens, the ally gets healed by 4% of their max HP. And the nice part about this is, of course, it's a little bit like having an Eloise. An Eloise that gets attacked and heals again. And this heal instantly after the attack is pretty huge, because you don't really get to low life, you get healed every time a little bit again. The 4% of max HP heal might seem small, but if you run tanky heroes with like crowns, the damage often isn't too far off on a normal hit, from maybe 4 to 10%. Sometimes a bit more, of course, but healing 4% and on an upgrade core, of course, more, is already quite huge. Beyond that, we gain 8% attack, which is a huge attack buff, and 8% armor, which will reduce the incoming damage significantly, and will, of course, make later hits be closer to those 4% of max HP, maybe even under the 4% of max HP, so we can actually heal off the enemy hits, which is huge as well and works. Definitely I've seen that work a lot of times. The second effect of the core: when an ally releases basic attacks or active skills, consumes 3 bottles of Immaculate Potion to increase the dot by 5% for the attacked enemy. And this is an effect I don't like. I mainly think that they put this in so you use up more core charges. Then again, of course, if you really focus on that and have like an enemy, maybe a boss or something that takes some dot, maybe by Ithaka or another hero, or even the enemy team really, dot is an incredibly efficient way to deal damage, and Star Alchemist Holmes Young will make sure to show you that this is an incredibly efficient way to deal damage. Basically, this can be good, of course, but 5% is really not a whole lot. And if you consider, if we take a look at his active skill and take a look at the Void Extraction Potion, we can see besides all the effects of one bottle, additionally increases the dot by 35% for all enemies. So we kind of already have a huge dot increase on him, so it's not really that great. Beyond that, it takes up a lot of potions actually, and if every ally, and we have 6 allies or 5 allies on the team, does like an attack, it will already take 15 potions from us, so a quarter of our potions at that level, which we really don't want to. And there is a way to avoid that, and we will talk about that. The last effect, and this effect actually doesn't take any potion. When an ally dies, there is a 50% chance to inflict perceptual disorder on each enemy for 1 round. This sentence actually lies. It was that way apparently, but the effect was changed when it was released on our servers, and the description was seemingly never changed. So the real effect of the core is like, it's the same as for Holmes Young's active skill. So this will target the 2 highest attack enemies and has a 50% chance to inflict perceptual disorder on them. And perceptual disorder itself is an effect that Holmes Young has, and has on his normal skills as well, and is described here. Skill effect: during its validity period, changes the active skill or basic attack of affected heroes to poisons one of their allies at random, dealing 1000% of attack damage for 6 rounds. So not only do we hinder the enemy from attacking, or we don't really hinder them from attacking, we change their attack and make them poison their allies, which is absolutely huge. The poison damage is just an added buff, of course. It's just rather nice to really lock down an enemy. You can imagine a situation where like you run SFX and Mockman in a team that I did, for example, and the SFX attacks kills like one of the enemies off, and suddenly your Mockman that was supposed to attack next and was maybe your second householder gets knocked down by perceptual disorder from the core without Holmes Young even attacking. And suddenly he doesn't even attack on that turn, and basically the opponent gets away with a 3 turn. And this can of course be amplified both of the second effect, the problems of the second effect we talk about, and basically the third effect are a lot stronger if you run some suicide heroes in your team. Like Carrie, for example. Carrie is huge, Michelle is huge. Michelle, of course, because she instantly revives in the next round. Carrie, because she can infinitely often revive. Both can be quite huge. And the idea basically of teams like this is you have a carry that can die, and when the carry dies, perceptual disorder is inflicted and disrupts the enemy team. And beyond that, when the carry is dead, she of course can't attack, so can't consume those 3 potions here, which makes the core last longer. And if you have less heroes on the field that can be hit, because the carries are oftentimes dead, then of course the remaining heroes gain a lot of those attack and armor buffs and a lot of heal, and can deal way more damage, which in case of Holmes Young is quite huge, because Holmes Young inflicts damage over time effects, and damage over time effects, as I said before, are incredibly good at killing off enemies, especially if you look at your heroes. Most of them will have Control Purify, so no Dot Purify. And Dot Purify isn't really common in the meta, so Holmes Young even stronger with his damage over time effect, and will be huge. Beyond that, the effect itself does even work if you don't focus on Holmes Young. It pretty much does, because like nothing here is really bound to Holmes Young or his stats, so you can basically use Holmes Young as a support hero for your team, just for the core, and it will still be worth it and will still be quite good. And you can focus on a better hero and a pretty good hero like Azrael, for example, or other heroes like EOS will all be good. The core is really plug and play, let's be real. Works infinitely better, as I said, with some carries in the team that can revive every now and then. I really don't like this core, to be honest. I think it's really broken. I think it's really overpowered. I complained to support about it. You'll have to see if they do something about it. But for now, this is, in my opinion, the strongest core, and it gets even Better if you upgrade it, of course, upgrading the amount of charges to 120 bottles. So double the bottles, no higher consumption of bottles, so it will last twice the time. Will give double the buffs with 16% attack and 16% armor and the 8% attack restoration. Dotting will be increased by even more, and the perceptual disorder chance goes to a whopping 100%. There's not even a chance to not inflict it. And this is not a CC, this is a skill effect. It will not be countered by control immunity. So it's really 100%. So if you can get the core liberation of level 8, as I said, by having 5 other noble cores on the team, this will be absolutely huge and absolutely devastating to the enemy. And I'm absolutely sure you can build huge teams with that. So, with that, guys, I want to end the video. Please tell me which course you decided to get, or which course do you want to get. And we will see us in the next one. Have a great day.